Welcome to 1000 Nights and One Night. Today, we continue with the story of the tale of Nur al-Din Ali and his son. And on the 21st night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the wazir stood up to him and welcomed him, said, Arise and go in to thy wife this night, and on the morrow I will carry thee to the sultan, and pray Allah bless thee with all manner of weal." So Nur al-Din left him and went into his wife, the wazir's daughter. Thus far concerning him, but as regards his elder brother, Shams al-Din, he was absent with the sultan a long time, and when he returned from his journey, he found not his brother, and he asked all of his servants and slaves, who answered, "On the day of thy departure with the sultan, thy brother mounted his mule fully caparisoned as for state procession, saying, I am going towards Kalibab town, and I shall be absent one day, or at most 2 days, for my breast is straitened, and let none of you follow me." Then he fared forth, and from that time to this we have heard no tidings of him. Shams al-Din was greatly troubled at the sudden disappearance of his brother, and grieved with exceeding grief at the loss, and said to himself, "This is only because I chided and upbraided him the night before my departure with the sultan. Haply his feelings were hurt, and he fared forth a traveling, but I must send after him." Then he went into the sultan and acquainted him with what had happened, and wrote letters and dispatches which he sent by running footmen to his deputies in every province. But during the 21 days of his brother's absence, Nur al-Din had traveled far and had reached Basra. So after diligent search for the messengers, failed to come at any news of him, and returned. Thereupon Shams al-Din despaired of finding his brother, and said, "Indeed, I went beyond all bounds in what I said to him with reference to the marriage of our children. Would that I had not done so. This all cometh of my lack of wit and want of caution." Soon after this, he sought in marriage the daughter of a Korean merchant, and drew up the marriage contract, and went in to her. And it was show chance that on this very same night, when Shams al-Din went in to his wife, Nur al-Din also went in to his wife, the daughter of the Wazir of Basra, thus being in accordance with the will of Almighty Allah, that it might deal the decrees of destiny to his creatures. Furthermore, it was as the two brothers had said, for their two wives became pregnant by them on the same night, and both were brought to bed on the same day. The wife of Shams al-Din, Wazir of Egypt, of a daughter never in Cairo was seen a fairer, and the wife of Nur al-Din, of a son, none more beautiful was ever seen in his time. As one of the poets said concerning the like of him, that jetty hair, that glossy brow, my slender waisted youth, of thine can darkness round creation throw, or make it brightly shine? The dusky mole that faintly shows upon his cheek, ah, blame it not. The tulip flower never blows undarkened by its spot. And as another said also, his scent was musk, and his cheek was rose. His teeth are pearls, and his lips drop wine. His form is a brand, and his hips as a hill. His hair is night, and his face moonshine. They named the boy Badr al-Din Hassan, and his grandfather, the Wazir of Basra, rejoiced in him, and on the seventh day after his birth made entertainments and spread banquets which would befit the king of their sons and all their heirs' birth. Then he took Nur al-Din and went up to him to the Sultan. And his son in law, when he came before the presence of the king, he kissed the ground between his hands, and repeated these verses, for he was ready in speech, firm of sprite and good in heart, and as he was goodly in form. The world's best joys long be thy lot, my lord, and last while darkness and the dawn overlap. O thou who makest when we greet thy gifts the world to dance and time his palms to clap. Then the Sultan rose up to honor them, and thanking Nur al-Din for his fine compliment, asked the Wazir, "Who may this young man be?" And the minister answered, "This is my brother's son," and related his tale from first to last. Quoth the Sultan, "And how comes he to be thy nephew, and we have never heard speak of him?" Quoth the minister, "O my lord the Sultan, I had a brother who was the wazir in the land of Egypt, and he died, leaving two sons, whereof the elder hath taken his father's place, and the younger whom thou seest came to me. I had sworn I would not marry my daughter to any but to him. So when he came, I married him to her. Now he is young and I am old. My hearing is dulled and my judgment is easily fooled. Wherefore I would solicit our lord the Sultan to set him in my stead, for he is my brother's son and my daughter's husband, and he is fit for the Wazrat, being a man of good counsel and ready contrivance." The Sultan looked at Nur al-Din, and he liked him. So he established him in office as the Wazir had requested, and formally appointed him, presenting him with a splendid dress of honor and a she-mule from his private stead, and assigning to him solid, stipends, and supplies. Nur al-Din kissed the Sultan's hand and went home, he and his father-in-law joying with exceeding joy, and saying, "All this followeth on the heels of the birth of the boy Hassan's birth." Next day he presented himself before the king, and kissing the ground began repeating, "Grow thy weal and thy welfare day by day, and thy luck prevail o'er the envier's spite. And ne'er cease thy days to be white as day, and thy foeman's day to be black as night." The Sultan bade him to be seated on the Wazir's seat. So he sat down, and he applied himself to the business of his office, and he went into the cases of the lieges and their suits, as is wont of ministers, while the Sultan watched him and wondered at his wit and good sense and judgment and insight. Wherefore he loved him and took him into intimacy. When the divan was dismissed, Nur al-Din returned to his house and related what had passed to his father-in-law, who rejoiced. And thenceforth Nur al-Din ceased not to administer the Wazrat, that the Sultan would not be parted from him night or day, and increased his stipends and supplies till his means were ample, and he became the owner of ships that made trading voyages at his command, as well as Mamelukes and blackamoor slaves, and he laid out many estates, and he set up Persian wheels and planted gardens. When his son Hassan was 4 years of age, the old Wazir deceased, and he made for his father-in-law a sumptuous funeral ceremony ere he was laid in the dust. Then he occupied himself with the education of his son, and when the boy waxed strong and came to the age of 7, he brought him a fakir, a doctor of law and religion, to teach him in his own house, and charged him to give him a good education and instruct him in politeness and good manners. So the tutor made the boy read and retain all varieties of useful knowledge after he had spent some years in learning the Koran by heart, and he ceased not to grow in beauty and stature and symmetry, even as the poet saith, "In his face sky shines the fullest moon, in his cheeks anemone glows the sun. He so conquered beauty that he hath won all charms of humanity, one by one." The professor brought him up in his father's palace, teaching him reading, writing, and ciphering, theology, and belles letters. His grandfather, the old Wazir, had bequeathed to him the whole of his property when he was but 4 years of age. Now, during all the time of his earliest youth, he had never left the house, till on a certain day his father, the Wazir Nur al-Din, clad him in his best clothes, and mounting him on a she-mule of the finest, went up to meet the Sultan. The king gazed at Badur al-Din Hassan, and marveled at his comeliness, and loved him. As for the city folk, when he first passed before them with his father, they marveled at his exceeding beauty, and sat down on the road expecting his return, that they might look their fill on his beauty and loveliness and symmetry and perfect grace, even as the poet said in these verses: "As the sage watched the stars, the semblance clear of a fair youth on scroll he saw appear, those jetty looks Canopus o'er him threw, and tinged his temple curls a musky hue. Mars dyed his ruddy cheek, and from his eyes the archer's star his glittering arrow flies. His wit from Hermes came, and Soha's care they have seen star that dimly haunts the bear, kept off all evil eyes that threatened and ensnared. The sage stood amazed to see such fortunes meet, and Luna kissed the earth beneath his feet. And they blessed him aloud as he passed, and called upon Almighty Allah to bless him. The Sultan entreated the lad with a special favor, and said to his father, "O Wazir, thou must bring him daily into my presence." Whereupon he replied, "I hear and I obey." Then the Wazir returned home with his son, and ceased not to carry him to court till he reached the age of 20. At that time the minister sickened, and sending from Badur al-Din Asan, said to him, "Know, O my son, that the world of the present is but a house of mortality, while that of the future is a house of eternity. I wish before I die to bequeath thee certain charges, and do thou take heed of what I say, and incline thy heart to my words." Then he gave him his last instructions as to the properest way of dealing with his neighbors, and the due management of his affairs. After which he called to mind his brother and his home and his native land, and he wept over the separation from those he had first loved. Then he wiped away his tears, and turning to his son, said to him, "Before I proceed, O my son, to my last charges and injunctions, know that I have a brother, and thou hast an uncle, Shams al-Din Hight, the Wazir of Cairo, with whom I parted, leaving him against his will. Now take thee a sheet of paper, and write upon it whatsoever I say to thee." Badur al-Din took a fair leaf, and set about doing his father's bidding, and he wrote thereon a full account of what had happened to his sire, first and last, the dates of his arrival at Bassora, and of his foregathering with the Wazir, of his marriage, of his going in to the minister's daughter, and of the birth of his son. Brief, his life of 40 years from the day of his dispute with his brother, adding the words, "And this is written at my dictation, and may Almighty Allah be with him when I am gone." Then he folded the paper and sealed it, and said, "O Hassan, O my son, keep this paper with all care, for it will enable thee to establish thine origins and rank and lineage, and if anything contrary befall thee, set out for Cairo and ask for thine uncle, and show him this paper, and say to him that I died a stranger, far from mine own people, and full of yearning to see them." And so Badur al-Din Hassan took the document and folded it, and wrapping it up in a piece of waxed cloth, sewed it like a talisman between the inner and outer cloth of his skull cap, and wound his light turban around it. And he fell weeping over his father, and at parting with him, and he but a boy. Then Nur al-Din lapsed into a swoon, the forerunner of death. I will now bequeath thee 5 last behests. The first behest is, be over intimate with none, nor frequent any, nor be familiar with any. So shalt thou be safe from his mischief. For security lieth in seclusion of thought, and a certain retirements from the society of thy fellows. And I have heard it said by the poet, "In this world there is none thou canst count upon to befriend thy case in the nick of need. So live for thyself, nursing hope of none. Such counsel I give thee, and now take heed." The second behest is, O my son, deal harshly with none, lest fortune with thee deal hardly. For the fortune of this world is one day with thee, and another against thee, and all worldly goods are but a loan to be repaid. And I have heard the poet say, "Take thou thought, nor haste to win the thing thou wilt. Have ruth on man, for ruth thou must require. No hand is there but Allah's hand is higher. No tyrant but shall rue worse tyrants tire." The third behest is, learn to be silent in society, and let thine own faults distract thine attention from the faults of other men. For it is said, "In silence dwelleth safety," and thereon I have heard the lines that tell us, "Reserve's a jewel, silence safety is. When thou speakest many a word withhold, for an of silence thou repeat thee once, a speech thou repent times manifold." The fourth behest, O my son, is, Beware of wine bibbing, for wine is the head of all frowardness and a fine solvent of human wits. So shun, and again I say shun, mixing strong liquor, for I have heard a poet say, from wine I turn, and whoso wine cups swill, becoming one of those who deem ill. Wine driveth man to miss salvation way, and opens the gateway wide to sins that kill. The fifth behest, O my son, keep thy wealth, and it will keep thee. Guard thy money, and it will guard thee. And waste not thy substance, lest haply thou come to want and must spare a begging from the meanest of mankind. Save thy dirhams, and deem them the sovereignest salve for the wounds of the world. And here again, I have heard that one of the poets said, when fails my wealth, no friend will deem befriend. When wealth abounds, all friends their friendship tender. How many friends lent aid my wealth to spend? But friends to lack of wealth, no friendship render. On this wise, Nur al-Din ceased not to counsel his son, Badur al-Din Hassan, till his hour came, and sighing one sobbing sigh, his life went forth. Then the voice of mourning and keening rose high in his house, and the Sultan and all the grandees grieved for him and buried him. But his son ceased not lamenting for loss for 2 months, during which he never mounted horse, nor attended the divan, nor presented himself before the Sultan. At last, the king being wroth with him, established in his stead one of his chamberlains and made him wazir, giving orders to seize and set seals on all Nur al-Din's houses and goods and domains. So the new wazir went forth with a mighty posse of chamberlains and the people of the divan, and watchmen and a host of idlers to do this, and to seize Badur al-Din Hassan and carry him before the king, who would deal with him as he deemed fit. Now there was among the crowd of followers a Mameluke of the deceased wazir, who, when he heard his order, urged his horse and rode at full speed to the house of Badur al-Din Hassan, for he could not endure to see the ruin of his old master's son. He found him sitting at the gate with head hung down and sorrowing as with his wont for the loss of his father. So he dismounted, and kissing his hand, said to him, O my lord and son of my lord, hast ere ruin come and lay waste? When Hassan heard this, he trembled and asked, what may be the matter? And the man answered, the Sultan is angered with thee, and hath issued a warrant against thee, and evil cometh hard upon my track. So flee with thy life. At these words, Hassan's heart flamed with the fire of Baal, and his rose-red cheek turned pale. And he said to the Mameluke, O my brother, is there time for me to go in and get me some worldly gear which may stand me instead during my strangehood? The slave replied, O my lord, up at once, and save thyself, and leave this house while it is yet time. And he quoted these lines, escape with thy life, if oppression betide thee, and let the house tell of its builder's fate. Country for country thou'lt find if thou seek it, life for life, never early or late. Strange men dwell in the house of abjection, when the plain of God's earth is so wide and so great. At these words of the Mameluke, Badur al-Din covered his head with the skirt of his garment and went forth on foot, till he stood outside of the city, where he heard folk saying, the Sultan hath sent his new wazir to the house of the old wazir, now no more to seal his property, and to seize his son Badur al-Din Hassan, and take him before the presence, that he may put him to death. And all cried, alas, alas, for his beauty and his loveliness. When he heard this, he fled forth at hazard, knowing not whither he was going, and gave not any hurrying onwards till destiny drove him to his father's tomb. So he entered the cemetery, and threading his way through the graves, at last he reached the sepulchre, where he sat down and let fall from his head the skirt of his long robe, which was made of brocade, with a gold embroidered hem, whereon were worked these couplets. O thou whose forehead, like the radiant east, tells of the stars of heavens and bounteous dews, endure thine honor to the last day, and time thy growth of glory never refuse. While he was sitting by his father's tomb, behold, there came to him a Jew, as he were a shaf, a money changer in a pair of saddlebags containing much gold, who accosted him and kissed his hand, saying, Whither bound, O my lord? 'Tis late in the day, and thou art clad but lightly, and I read signs of trouble in thy face. I was sleeping within this very hour, answered Hassan, when my father appeared to me and chided me for not having visited his tomb. So I woke trembling, and came hither forthwith, lest the day should go by without my visiting him, which would have been grievous to me. O my lord, rejoined the Jew, thy father had many merchantmen at sea, and as some of them are now due, it is my wish to buy of thee the cargo of the first ship that cometh into port, and this 1,000 with this 1,000 dinars of gold. I consent, quoth Hassan. Whereupon the Jew took out a bag full of gold, and counted out 1,000 sequins, which he gave to Hassan, the son of the Wazir, saying, Write me a letter of sale, and seal it. So Hassan took a paper and pen, and wrote these words in duplicate. The writer, Hassan Badur al-Din, son of Wazir Nur al-Din, hath sold to Isaac the Jew all the cargo of the first of his father's ships with coming into port for 1,000 dinars, and he hath received the price in advance. And after he had taken one copy, the Jew put it into his pouch and went away. But Hassan fell a weeping as he thought of the dignity and prosperity which had erst been his, and he began reciting, This house, my lady, since you left is now a home no more. For me, nor friends since you left proved kind and neighborly. The friend, while I took to heart, alas, no more to me is friend, and even Luna's self displayeth lunacy. You left, and by your going left the world a waste, a wold, and lies a gloomy mark upon the face of the hill and lay. Oh, may the raven bird whose cry our hapless parting croaked, find ne'er a nesty home, and each shed all his plumery. At length, my patience fails me, and this absence wastes my flesh. How many avail by severance rent our eyes our doomed see? Shall I ever sight again our fair past nights of yore, and shall a single house become a home for me once more? Then he wept with exceeding weeping, and night came upon him. So he leant his head against his father's grave, and sleep overcame him. Glory to him who sleepeth not. He ceased not slumbering till the moon rose, when his head slipped from off the tomb, and he lay on his back, with limbs outstretched, his face shining bright in the moonlight. Now the cemetery was haunted day and night by jinns who were of the true believers. And presently came a jinniyah, who, seeing Hassan asleep, marveled at his beauty and loveliness, and cried, Glory be to God! This youth can be none other than one of the Wolden of Paradise. Then she flew firmamentwards to circle it, as was her custom, and met an Ifrit on the wing, who saluted her and said to him, Whence thou come? From Cairo, he replied. Wilt thou come with me and look upon the beauty of a youth who sleepeth in yonder burial place? She asked, and he answered, I will. So they flew till they lighted the tomb, and she showed him the youth and said, Now didst thou ever in thy born day see aught like this? The Ifrit looked upon him and exclaimed, Praise be to him, thou hast no equal. But oh, my sister, shall I tell thee what I have seen this day? Asked she, What is that? And he answered, I have seen the counterpart of this youth in the land of Egypt. She is the daughter of Wazir Shams al-Din, and she is the model of beauty and loveliness, of fairest favor and foremost form, and dight with symmetry and perfect grace. When she had reached the age of 19, the Sultan of Egypt heard of her, and sent for the Wazir. Her father said to him, Hear me, O Wazir, it hath reached mine ear that thou hast a daughter, and I wish to demand her of thee in marriage. And the Wazir replied, O our lord, the Sultan, deign accept my excuses and take compassion on my sorrows, for thou knowest that my brother, who was partner with me in the Wazirate, disappeared from us amongst many years ago, and we wot not where he is. Now the cause of his separation was that one night, as we were sitting together, and talking of wives and children to come, we had words on the matter, and he went off in a high dungeon. But I swore that I would marry my daughter to none save to the son of my brother on the day her mother gave her birth, which was nigh upon 19 years ago. I have lately heard that my brother died at Bassora, where he married the daughter of the wazir, and that she bare him a son. And I will not marry my daughter, but to him in honor of my brother's memory. I recorded the date of my marriage, and the conception of my wife, and the birth of my daughter, and from horoscopes I can find that her name is conjoined with that of her cousin, and that there are damsel in foison for our lord the Sultan. The king, hearing his minister's answer and refusal, waxed wroth with exceeding wrath, and cried, when the like of me asketh a girl in marriage of the like of thee, he conferreth an honor, and thou rejectest me, and putting me off with cold excuses. Now, by the life of my head, I will marry her to the meanest of my men, in spite of the nose of thee. There was in the palace a horse groom, who was a gobbo, with a bunch to his breast and a hunch to his back. And the Sultan sent for him, and married him to the daughter of the wazir, lief or loath, and hath ordered a pompous marriage procession for him, and that he go in to his bride this very night. I have now just flown hither from Cairo, where I left the hunchback at the door of the Hammam bath, amidst the Sultan's white slaves, who were waving lighted flambeaux above him. As for the minister's daughter, she sitteth among her nurses, entire women, weeping and wailing, for they have forbidden her father to come near her. Never have I seen, O my sister, more hideous a being than this hunchback, whilst the young lady is the likeliest of all folk to this young man, albeit even fairer than he. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so I bid thee farewell until the morrow.